The next area to cover with CSS is the area of classes and IDs. A class is something that you create yourself. Sometimes you need to have more styles than the elements that you have in place. For example, if we look at the style sheet, we have one element for paragraph, but you might want to have several different kinds of paragraphs. You may need a paragraph that's smaller, maybe for captions and pictures. Maybe you want to use a paragraph that's a certain color in certain places of your site, and you'd like to establish a style for that. It's pretty easy to do, to establish a special class. And classes are things that you can use multiple times on a site. To establish a class, you just put the period, the dot, and then name it anything you want. In this case, I'm going to name the one that we're using small, but you can name it anything you want. And then we're going to set up the curly braces so that we can put the styles in here. And I'm just going to do a font size to be something pretty small, like 8px. And then I want to do font style italic. And I want to be able to then apply this to something on the page. So I'm going to save this and then go back to the index page. And at the bottom here, I want to create something that's more like a copyright. So I'm going to create a paragraph that says copyright 2016. And maybe I just want that to be smaller than all the rest of the paragraphs. So all I have to do is establish the class in the style sheet and then call it here on this paragraph. So if we save this and we come back to the page and refresh, we should see very tiny here at the bottom, copyright 2016. And it worked. So now you can see how we can have as many styles as we want to be able to control how things look on the page. Sometimes you need something that is called an ID. You only get to use an ID one time on a page. So you have to think carefully about whether you want to use a class, which you can use for multiple elements on a page, or an ID, which you can only use once. IDs are very good for things that you want to control one time, such as the size of a section of the page. And we haven't really talked about divs yet, but this is a new element that allows you to create a box on the page. It's basically a blank canvas that you can create a box that you can put things in. And you can start thinking about your page as a grid and setting up different divs with individual IDs in them that will allow you to control sections of the site, like the header, or the place where the content goes, or a footer, or the place where the navigation goes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create some code for a header and then create the section for the header in the HTML page. So let's go to the style sheet, and toward the bottom of the style sheet, I'm going to add the code for a header. And the ID is indicated in the style sheet by the pound sign or the hashtag. And I'm just going to call this one header, and you can, again, call these anything you want because we're creating our own IDs and classes at this point. And for the header, I want to set up some different dimensions. And I'm going to use the things that I have here in the tutorial. So I'm going to do a width of standard pixels 960, a height of 100, and a background color of light blue. This is just going to create a box of this size in a light blue color. And so let me paste these in here, or you could type those out and save it. So the style's been created, but we need a place in the page that actually is going to be the location of our header div. And in this case, I just want the H1 on the page to be the header. Later, we could replace this with something like a logo or some more content. And so we're just going to use div, because this is identifying the box that we're creating. And then we're going to say ID this time equal, then the name of the ID that we created, or the ID that we created in the style sheet. And we just have to make sure that we close it. So let me show you what that looks like. I will save it and then come back to the page and refresh. And we should, yes we did, start to see the beginnings of a header section. We actually have a blue box that is 960 pixels wide and 100 pixels high. And now you can see how we could go about the rest of the page, where we could create a section for the nav, we could create a section for the rest of our content on the page, and we could even create a footer section. One final thing that I want to point out is that classes and IDs can also be associated with specific elements. So that if we wanted to create a small class that's only associated with paragraphs, we could put the P preceding it here. And if we wanted to only have header associated with div, so it couldn't be associated with span or any other thing we'd be applying an ID to, we could do that here. I personally don't use this very often, but sometimes people want to have perhaps the same name of a class that is associated with a paragraph and then use the same name for H1 or H2 or for something else and have it be a slightly different style. You can use any of these methods that you want, whatever makes sense to you, and I encourage you to play around with the styles that we have applied thus far to start getting the kind of layout that you want for the page. We will go into more advanced layout in the next section.